Hey again everybody, Arjun here from Renegade Spores, and I wanted to make a quick video showing you another one of our permaculture mycology experiments. So we got a whole bunch of these logs. We got a whole lot of logs dropped off from an arborist, and my plan was initially to do plug spawn in most of them, and we ended up actually getting a complaint from a very disrespectful and rude neighbor who started bossing us around and telling us what we can and can't do. And they were repeatedly calling the bylaw guys and complaining. So bylaw came by and tried to tell us that, that our gardens are garbage. They used the word refuse. And they said, hey, look, they served us an order, an order to comply. And I told them I definitely will not comply. But the situation we were in was basically we just wanted to make things happen a little bit faster. We went ahead and served the town. We served the town, we served the town a dispute, and we're going to be serving the neighbor too. I'm not sure I'm supposed to say that on camera, but I can always delete this video afterwards. Anyhow, we had to move these logs fast, and we didn't have enough time to do the plug spawn. And I thought, there's a lot of tried and true methods that other mycologists and mushroom farmers are using to grow mushrooms. Plug spawn in logs is one of them. The bucket tech is something that I've been using. But I've seen a couple other people do interesting things, and I also realize, I've studied mycology for quite a few years, and I understand that that mushrooms are some of the they're the oldest surviving form of life on the planet, really. And they're incredibly adaptable and intelligent species and creatures. So I decided I was going to do some experiments. So instead of drilling holes in these logs and plugging it with spawn, we installed them we installed them first, and I was going to run around and plug them up. But then I decided, why even bother plugging them? Why not just run a whole bunch of spawn along the edge and let the mycelium find its way into the logs? So we have a whole bunch of shiitake here. All the way around it's been inoculated with shiitake. Over here we've inoculated this with shiitake too. I also, underneath this, you can't see it, but I took a bunch of slices of round slices off of the logs and laid them down underneath. And then used sawdust, spawn, sawdust, and finally some wood chips on top. And the idea, hopefully, is that the mycelium finds its way inside of the bark. Now, some of these situations are like this one's not very exposed, right? It's exposed to the air. So I might come around and fill some of this in with some more wood chips. I'm not sure how successful this is going to be. I know the mushrooms will grow out of the spawn area, but I'm not sure whether or not they'll colonize these logs. I think I've got to stuff these holes with some more sawdust. So that's an experiment that we're doing. And there's another thing, though, that I want to show you, and it's another similar sort of an idea, although I think this is going to work a lot better. And I'll explain why in a second when I show you our shiitake area. Actually, this area back here there's multiple different species here. So each of these logs has, except for the middle one, each of these logs, except for the middle log, has been inoculated with oyster mushrooms, just because that's the spawn we had. But this area, we wanted to make this into a sort of shiitake village. So I had laid down a bunch of wood chips in here and some spawn. The spawn wasn't really taking off that much. It was growing on the substance that the spawn was already on, but it wasn't taking onto the wood chips really well. And I suspect that's because these wood chips came from earlier in the season when we got a big drop, and that drop ended up getting rained on and other molds moved in. And so what I did was we coated the pile in hydrated lime to raise the pH. We spread it out across our driveway. We raked it back and forth in the sun. We hit it with soap and chlorinated water, and pressure washed it a couple of times to get any of the extra mold and spores out, and to mix the germ killers in there. So some of these wood chips, and actually some of them I also soaked in chlorine water. So some of these wood chips probably still have chlorine in them, and it's going to take some time for the mycelium to come and colonize them. So what I went ahead and did was I sliced a bunch of rounds. We put a whole layer of fresh sawdust down, another layer of spawn, then we put those rounds on top, and then I'm covering it with with wood chips. Now each of these milk crates is also, these are experiments. So these are different cultures. I think these two are chestnut mushrooms. This one is, I believe, a type of oyster mushroom. I'm not sure what type it is because we got it from a farmer's market, and there were just these beautiful, fluffy, white and yellow oyster mushrooms, and I decided I wanted to run that culture. So that's that. And then over here we also have something we got from the grocery store. We've got some, these are king oysters. Now you can't really see it that well, but there is mycelium growing in here. There, you can see some pieces of it right there. There's a piece of the king oyster. So the mycelium is starting to run onto these, and I figured I might as well just leave these experiments on top of one or the other bed, on the off chance that if it doesn't take off in there, the culture might come up from underneath that's there, or some of it might come down and end up in the in this area. So we might end up with multiple cultures in here, but mostly it's shiitake under here. Now, what I also went ahead and did was, when we made this circle here, now those have all been plugged, as you can see with the you can see the wax there from the plug spawn, right? So those are all blue oysters. However, in this middle area, I laid a whole bunch of, I put some wood chips down, laid a whole bunch of sawdust, a whole bunch of spawn, a whole bunch more sawdust, and then I put this log directly on top of it and filled it in with more wood chips. My hope there is that the shiitake spawn is going to grow up through the cambium layer inside and colonize this log. I suspect it'll work. It's a similar concept to the way the plug spawn works. This is just a bit of a different spin on it. So I think this is going to be successful. And then I'll show you what it looks like in the early stages, because over here we're about to do the same thing. So as you can see, I've got these big logs that are, they're in pretty good shape. This one over here was, it was sitting on the ground from the very first drop. So I just sprayed this down with some alcohol. You can see some other myceliums moving in there a little bit. But I'm not too worried about that because it's not a whole lot. I sterilized it a little bit to slow that down. And then over here, we added a whole bunch of spawn. These are golden oyster spawn. So you can see I laid down a layer of straw first, and then I threw down a bunch of spawn in these areas that are going to be over, the logs are going to be over them. And then I covered it in some fresh sawdust. So there's 4 spots here. We're going to lay these logs on top of them, and then we're going to fill it in with wood chips. I might also get another spawn bag and add it in and around, which is sort of something I'm doing with this application. Now this is a test. I'm not 100% sure that this is going to work, but I'm like 99% sure it's going to work. So far, everything that we have done here has worked, which is really exciting. We have a whole lot of, we got a bunch of buckets over here. I checked these 6 buckets. So these 6 buckets are all, those are all blue oysters. I opened them up the other day, and the mycelium's doing really well in there. Over here we have, these 2 buckets are lion's mane. Now, I used aspen shavings for this, and what I learned using aspen shavings to jump some spawn onto in a few different cultures is that aspen it has resins in it. You can even smell it. It has almost kind of a pine smell, although aspen is not a pine. It's a hardwood. And I noticed that the mycelium is very slow to eat it, which and also in some places where I thought, these aspen shavings were going to end up getting colonized by bacteria, nothing. It's perfectly clean, still has this fresh, beautiful smell to it. So I don't recommend aspen shavings if you want your culture to take off quickly or to fruit quickly. However, the usefulness of them is that not a lot of other stuff seems to want to eat them. And if you put a decent amount of spawn in there, you don't have to worry too much about sterilization or pasteurization. What I found is that this bucket tech works really well, even if you're not super sterile about it. But if you make sure to drill holes in the bottom of the bucket that excess moisture can come out, that's ideal. Anyway, that was just a side note. This is what we're up to over here. Is I'm going to install those logs and build another bed like I showed you over there. So this is one of the experiments we're doing here. Now I'm going to pop over here into the wine cap, our first wine cap bed. These cages have been working really well too. They're a little ugly. This was the first rendition of these, but I'm going to be changing them. These things have done so well, it's insane the amount of mushrooms. We've got pounds and pounds and pounds of mushrooms out of these, whereas the buckets don't seem to produce nearly as many flushes of mushrooms as these. So this technology that I innovated, this is my idea, okay? I came up with this. You saw it here first. Go ahead and do it, but you saw it here first. And if you, if you're out there and you're watching this and you want to, give me some love and give me a shout out, if you go ahead and do this yourself, I'd greatly appreciate it, because I'm pretty proud of this idea. It's an original idea. It's creative and it's extremely effective. And I want to share this idea with the world. So we also have, as I was showing earlier, we lined this bed with these logs. Now, it was a little bit out. So this is our wine cap culture. It was our very first mushroom bed. As you can see, the mycelium is just going crazy. Like, it's coming all the way up to the surface. We've used this to inoculate a bunch of other areas. It's so strong and healthy and hungry. But what we decided to do was to scoop spawn out all the way around from the side to inoculate this area over here. So that's going to be another wine cap bed. Actually, this is going to be a mixed bed as well. You can see that I've laid some logs out. You can't see too well. Just a second, I'll zoom in. You can see I've laid another bunch of flat logs out. Now, underneath them, I put some pink oyster spawn. And then I'm going to do the same sort of thing as I did over there and in the shiitake area. But we're doing that here too. So we scooped a bunch of the wine cap spawn out to make space. We used it to inoculate all that straw. And then in this area, we filled this all in with sawdust and chestnut mushroom spawn, and then more sawdust and wood chips on top. Now, it's hard to say what's going to happen here. It's really hard to say whether or not the chestnut spawn will take off. I mean, I know it'll take off, but here's the thing. The wine caps may overpower them. So it's hard to say exactly what'll happen. The cultures may compete. They also may rub up against each other and not fight too much for the same food, considering this culture has lots of food. It's hard to say what's going to happen here. This is the area that I'm most... This is the area that I have the least confidence in because of how aggressive and hungry this wine cap culture is. Although it's a test, I want to try it out and see how it works. Either way, we're going to end up with with a beautiful, healthy culture. But I'm testing this out to see if we can make installations where one culture and another culture coexist side by side, and we're doing that here too. You can't see it. Let's see. There you go. This is some pink oyster spawn, I believe. Now, this top bed, this is, you can't see, but this is split in two. I put a bunch of blue oyster underneath. Look, you can see the mycelium on here. Isn't that beautiful? It was coming right through the cardboard. Over there's some pieces of mushrooms I harvested today. But this is in two steps. Half of this is blue oyster on the bottom, and that's on, I think, a combination of straw and coffee grinds. We put another layer of cardboard in between, and on top, initially it had been blue oysters, but it wasn't taken off too well. So what I did was I dug in here and I put a huge thick layer of pink oyster spawn. So the idea is that maybe we'll get one culture in the bottom, one culture in the top. Eventually one will probably take over, but it's an experiment, right? I don't know if anything's happening inside of this milk crate. This is an example of what I was talking about. If you dig in here, there's nothing growing in here. Doesn't even smell bad, so it's not bacterial either. I'm probably just going to take this and feed it to something else because it's not really doing anything. But this is a double culture. Here's a double culture over there. We've got a few different things. This is the wine cap area. I'm just going to walk over here. And then, so this was another initial wine cap bed. And we've been using the mycelium out of this for inoculation, so we haven't got any fruits yet. But I suspect late summer, early fall, we'll start to see the wine cap beds explode, and we'll just have more mushrooms than we know what to do with. So those are those rounds back there, and I threw some pink oyster mushrooms underneath them. Just some of the mushrooms that were a little too far gone. I figured, well, we'll just use it as spawn. So all of those, I'm going to do a similar thing where I fill in the edges around it with wood chips to give the culture darkness and moisture. But then over here on the side, this is also all chestnut mushroom spawn that we've installed here. So we installed this chestnut mushroom spawn along the edge of this new wine cap bed. Now this is a new wine cap bed. This is new, it's fresh. So if one of the other of these experiments is going to succeed, I think this one is more likely to succeed because the wine cap mushrooms haven't had a chance to really fully colonize here. And the amount of chestnut spawn I put in here was pretty good amount. So this is our experiment with multiple different cultures that we're working on. and putting cultures next to each other instead of isolating them. And over here, this is probably our biggest culture right now, and you can't see it because we've harvested them all, but we got also just pounds and pounds and pounds and pounds out of this culture. And I decided it was about half as thick, and I decided I'm just going to keep adding new fresh food to it, because this is a really, really thick culture. Let's see if I can peel this back and show you guys. You can't really see it too well, but look in there. And this is like, this cardboard was white all the way along. So this is blue oyster mushrooms. And eventually I'm gonna wrap the front of this in another skid. That's my idea, is to use these packing skids and to create just a really dense pack so that we don't end up with mushrooms getting stuck in the cages. Like we had these cages, and those cages over there that you saw earlier in the video. And that was my initial idea. And what I realized is that the mushrooms were sometimes coming out, the fruits were coming out and getting tangled up and messed up. So we're adapting this application so that it's